Make sure the
Okay.
stream is good. Can you guys hear Voyager in the background?
No?
Okay, good.
No, not really.
Are we good? There we go. Okay, we're good. All right.
I might actually be catching little bits of it. Now that you mention it, you might just like kick the gain down a notch. Just like some really vague background music every once in a while.
Hey, baby. Can you turn down the volume just a little bit more?
I'll just watch it upstairs.
You sure?
Yeah,
Okay.
gotta get the dogs up there anyways.
Oh, they're gonna have a fit. Oh, come here.
And I'm gonna try to get lots of treats and have a beer. Be able to stay calm.
Oh, wait. Bring Monster over.
Mustard, come here, buddy.
Come here.
Mustard, come here.
I don't know if he'll show up on the camera.
Poppy.
Hold on, I have to move the webcam. There he is. Look at how humongous.
That's a Poppy.
Yeah, he's humongous. Look at.
He is a big boy.
There
There you go.
you go. Bring Kira. Kira, come here.
Yeah.
Come here, Kira.
Nope.
But yeah, he is huge. Okay.
Oh, I'm trying not to be salty as fuck about how today went.
Oh no.
Try to be happy.
Yeah, I was gonna say you don't look very, very happy.
I was hungover as fuck from the Super Bowl because the
Oh.
person we went to, Dan's uncle, Hippie Dan, was holding it. And it was his birthday at the same time. So we were taking drinks for his birthday and then also drinking for the Super Bowl. And I
Right.
was pretty hungover this morning. And then I got stuck on call all through my lunch period. And so
Oh,
I didn't get to take lunch.
I hate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I'm all good. Hey there, Kikairo. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Thank you for coming out to the stream.
My video just shows refreshing, so I can't see if our video is going through.
My stream
But,
health.
but hello.
My stream health.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, excellent. All right, let's get this started.
Yeah, do it.
All right. Welcome to episode 36 of the Secret Caliber podcast. Once again, my name is Mo. With me, I've got Corey.
Yo.
And I got Derek.
Hi, folks.
So, did you guys, well, we were talking about it, but for those who weren't here for the live show, did you guys catch the Super Bowl and that amazing game?
That was a really good game.
It was really, really good.
There's lots of ups and downs. Both teams played really well. It wasn't like either team was just playing like garbage. And it was the first time a game went into overtime for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
That was really, really cool. You missed it, Derek. You should feel bad for yourself.
Eh. I saw last season's finale of Sports Ball, and it wasn't all that great, so I sort of just fell out of the fandom.
Well, you know
Wow.
what? The commercials were actually not that great this year. I
Yeah.
think there was like one or two that kind of stand out, but ultimately just...
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Lady Gaga performance was okay. It wasn't like the best. Like the best was still Katy Perry writing in on the Megazord, then writing out on the More You Know star. Like that was the best.
And the Sharks.
And the Sharks,
The
yeah.
dancing-
Like everything about that was like perfect. It wasn't that level of good, but it was still pretty decent.
But yeah, it was a cool game.
Yeah. Outside of the Super Bowl, what have you guys been up to recently?
I'm still trying to slog through Binding of Isaac Anti-Birth. It's kicking my butt. I honestly have a negative win streak right now
Oh,
because I
no.
keep dying. Again. It's like it's such a big toss-up because there's an alternate pathway that's definitely harder, and it makes it more fun because I can just blow through the regular pathway.
Right.
And it gives you more rewards in that whenever you go to an item room, it gives you a double choice every time. It's a guaranteed choice between two items, so you can almost always get a pretty good item.
It's cool.
However, it is harder, and the bosses fuck me up. It's like if you don't have a already one run by the time you go down to like the second level of the alternate path, you're fucked. You're boned.
Oh.
But I don't know. I'll get over it. I'll get good eventually. But as of right now, it's really hard. Especially playing the double character. It's super hard.
Is it like hard because get good, or is it hard because it's not well designed?
Okay, well, there is a little bit of bad design in it, in that there are a couple enemies and bosses that destroy ground, and you can't move over empty ground. And there's been at least one time where I've had to hard reset the game because it literally was impossible to traverse a level because they had like a one pathway bridge and an enemy destroyed it and I didn't have flying or anything, so I was screwed. I had to restart. I had Alt F4, go back in, and then try to beat that room faster than the enemies were breaking bricks, which was a pain in the ass. So a little bit of bad. I mean, ultimately, that's only caused 2 restarts. But on top of that, like, some of those enemies have ridiculous shots on them. Anytime you have a lob shot in that game, it's really hard to tell with depth perception on a kind of it's not isometric, but it's almost top down.
Right.
And when it lobs, you kind of have to look at the shadow. And then sometimes it's like it feels like you're standing here and it gets you hit. It's weird.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of lob shots in this version, so you kind of have to worry about that a lot. Outside of that, it's mostly just get good. It's getting the patterns down, walking into a room, immediately knowing where you should walk into which safe zone and avoid getting hit.
Okay. Cool. What about you, Derek?
Recently finally got around to beating the story on Mass Effect 2 the first time.
Oh, nice.
And moved on to playing Witcher 2. So still playing old games. Some of these are like that. But having fun.
Speaking of old games, I've actually been playing Desgaia 1 and 2 came out for PC, and I bought that recently. And that's
Nice.
it's so much fun. I forgot how much fun that game is. Although they introduced like new characters and different bosses and things like that, you can do alternate runs and things like that. But they didn't fix the one thing I hated about the game: the fact that you only get or party members only get XP if they join into the fight or if they kill an enemy. Like, that's the only way.
Yeah.
And so your healers are, like, severely underleveled. You gotta do this entire rigmarole to, like, give them a gun or a bow, or have them tutor a mage and learn the mage spells. And it's stupid, and I hate having to do that. And I wish they would have changed that aspect. I don't know if it's even possible or not, but that's one complaint I had about the game. The other game is that it's in that weird isometric view, but it's locked in 4 different directions. And so it's really easy for enemies to hide behind walls, or you can't see where they're going. It's really hard to kind of plan without having to rotate the map like a million times, because instead of getting like a view between these two, you got to rotate it back and forth and kind of, I think he's there and he may be path around here.
Yeah. Free rotation would be much better, and we have the technology to handle that, so...
Exactly.
That was actually a problem in RTSs for a while there. Whenever they had the isometric view locked in place, you couldn't even like swivel it around. I know in at least a couple Command and Conquer games, if there were trees, you can put guys behind trees, and you literally wouldn't know they were there until you walked by them and started getting shot.
Oh, wow.
But, get good. Just assume all trees. And then you got Red Alert 2, where they literally had Mirage tanks, which were tanks that, after they stood still, turned into trees. And they would shoot. And the only reason you would know it's a Mirage tank is when it shot, it would give, like, a little spark. So, you just spark off a forest of them and have people walk through, and their people die. But we've moved beyond that. We're now at the point where everyone free wobbles their cameras, so
right.
can't get away.
And then I've also been playing uh, Resident Evil 7. I haven't gotten too far into it, but that game is the sound in that game is amazing. Like whoever did the sound design, like you A plus. I hope they get like an award or during the VGAs or something because I'm not even in VR. I'm playing with a controller, and these are like pseudo surround sound, and just the depth that sound makes. Like I'm like looking around, like what the fuck was that? Looking under the things. I'm thinking sounds are actually in my house and not in game. It's crazy. Um, I've gotten through the first maybe hour or so, which is almost identical to the demo. It pretty much sets up everything that you're going to be doing. So I don't have a lot to talk about that game just yet, although the sound design is amazing and it looks amazing too. Like it's probably the prettiest Final Fantasy Resident Evil game I've seen in a very, very long time.
I've watched like at least 4 or 5 YouTubers play through like the first half hour or so of it, and I gotta say, it really makes you feel hopeless because I
Yes.
watched them plug zombies for like up, but why won't it die?
Yeah.
Like it's like every zombie takes about like 20 shots to put down. So
Yeah.
yeah, it seems a lot more terrifying in that even if you know how to shoot well, you're still gonna have to run away
Yeah.
and be a little panicked
Yeah.
sometimes.
Everyone's been saying if you take Resident Evil 1 and combine it with 4, that's what this game feels like, except in first person. I can definitely see that vibe in the game. But so far I'm loving it.
Ba, 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 ba.
Cool.
All right. No chainsaw yet.
No, no.
Sackman will live in our dreams forever.
All right. Before we get on to our story, I do want to go ahead and plug some things. If you want to, go ahead and give us a like on Facebook, facebook.com/The Secret Caliber Podcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We don't have our custom URL yet. We need 100 subscribers. We got like 1 or 2 last week. Thank you for subscribing, guys.
Yay.
We are like 93 away from that custom URL. If you want to search for us on YouTube, just search for The Secret Caliber Podcast, and we should be the first hit. Follow us on Twitter at TSCL Podcast. Whenever we go live, like we are today and every Monday, you'll get notification. And you get a notification on when our YouTube videos go up as well, and when we do the podcast in audio form. Speaking of audio form, subscribe to our podcast in your favorite podcast aggregate, be it iTunes, Google Play, whatever you use. If you're using iTunes or anything that gives ratings, give us a rating that you think we earn. If you think we're 5 stars, yay. If you think you're 1 star, boo. But at least rate us and let us know how we're doing. Lastly, you can send us an email at thesecretcaliberpodcast@gmail.com. Any complaints, concerns, or questions, go ahead and let us know there. And with that, let us go ahead to our news item of the week. It has been a stupid, slow, month in gaming. I think the last big thing we had was the Switch reveal. That was a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, there's not a whole lot going on. But I did find this video from Tropes versus Woman, and I'm gonna butcher her name. I'm sorry. It's Shark.
Anita Sarkeesian.
Thank you, Anita Sarkeesian.
Yeah. Not to be confused with Sharkeisha. Damn, Sharkeisha!
Don't kick her. Oh my god.
Yeah, bring that up in a video. That's relevant.
Oh my god. All right, so
This is from the Feminist Frequency channel on their series Tropes versus Women in Video Games.
correct.
To clarify.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a lot of interesting talking points that I wanted to get into because it's somewhat relevant to my interest. She tackles she delves into the tragic impact of perpetuating stereotypes of blacks and other minority characters. And a list of games that she talks about is Far Cry 3, Resident Evil 5, Diablo 3. Some of the games are Watch Dogs 2 and Mafia 3. I'm not going to go into the entire thing that she's talking about because it's at least a 15-minute video. If you want to, if you're not listening to us live, pause it, go watch the video, and come back. Excellent. If you're watching us live, wait until we're done and then go back and kind of watch it because the technology just isn't there yet. All right. Now, there were three specific things I wanted to talk about, just kind of condense everything into a nice little package today. She makes claims on exoticism in video games. She makes claims on games with people of character, where the games actually acknowledge their racial identity or their cultural background. And then she makes claims on games with people of color that don't acknowledge their race or their cultural background. So those are the three things I want to go ahead and talk about today, and I would go ahead and throw it to you guys. What did you think of her video and of her opinions?
Like usual for me with Phineas Sarkeesian, I've watched at least a handful of the Feminist Frequency videos, especially the Tropes versus Women in Video Games series, and while I'm a lot less apt to scoff and ignore Anita Sarkeesian, as a lot of folks on the internet are. And I am a feminist. I feel pretty strongly about the plight of women in our society and other societies, and I do readily acknowledge that tropes in media often reinforce really negative things. Because people might argue, what does it matter? It's just a game, just a movie, just a comic, whatever. But, it is part of our culture, and the cultural viewpoint does matter, as well as representation is important. In general, though I'm usually that said, I'm usually on board with the gist of what she's talking about, but often feel that she does get a bit overzealous and kind of go overboard, at least a little bit most of the time. So, and I feel like that is the case once again here. There are a lot of good points. I, in general, am on board with the main crux of the video, but she goes overboard, and she also kind of meanders off what I think is the real point.
Yes.
For like a good 6 or 7 minutes straight, and then comes back to it.
The middle. Just get this out of the way. The middle portion is kind of set up, but that setup should have been done in the beginning of the video, where she's talking about kind of the background of exoticism and how that came about, how the certain tropes of African American women being kind of, or African American and sometimes Latina women in general, how they're made to be over sexualized and things like that. That part was
being inherently strongly sexual and
correct,
invalidating the treatment of them.
Right. I think that could have been cut down and moved to the beginning because it does kind of strengthen why this is happening. But I agree, she did kind of meander, and I was like, come on, get to the point. I get it. Go on.
Yeah.
There was something. Where are my notes? Crap. Nope. That's not my notes. All right. So I want to talk first about, because I have a lot, because like I said, I'm somewhat vested in this. Her point about Citra in Far Cry 3. She makes a point that she's just over-sexualized. She's got a skimpy bra, skimpy loincloth. And I didn't realize this, but in one of the bad endings, spoilers for Far Cry 3 if you haven't played through it, you have
the warning to pause or mute.
Yeah. You have the option to kill your friends for her because you're in love with her or whatever reason. So after doing that, you two have sex on this altar.
Yep. And
then she kills you, and so our baby will now rule the land. Ha 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 ha. And it's like, where did that come from? And I'm like, okay, that's a problem. I agree. That is
very confident in her fertility.
Right.
Not even going to test that.
Right. Exactly.
One and done. I'm gonna stab him. Yeah. I believe it.
So the fact
But
that her overall outfit and the kind of sexual tension between the two characters for no reason. Okay, I'm behind it. That is a little awkward, and it doesn't necessarily propel the story forward. Got it. Um, my issue with her argument about this is that the problem isn't that she's a person of color being over sexualized. The problem is she is a woman being over sexualized. That layer of person of color is not needed because that's not the argument. Like once you make her not objectified, anything below that is immediately, rectified. So
there is a bit of the. I'm just gonna. It's not my term, but the generally accepted term for the trope is the magical Negro.
yes,
And she does kind of fit that. So,
yes, but
why is she black? Because black people have magic. That's why. Like,
yeah,
that's really kind of the gist of it.
but that's a separate argument.
Yeah.
That's another problem I have with this is that she conflates two separate ideas. There's the over sexualization and the magical Negro. Like that is definitely a problem. Right. And they're both handled in different ways. And I think she's trying to do this as a catch-all, and that just muddies her overall topic or her overall argument, I guess I should say. And she could this is a common thread throughout her entire video. When she talks about Shiva, okay, her alternate costume. All right, I agree. That's a bit ridiculous.
Straight up dumb fan service.
I get it, and then I thought
it's racist on top of it. Like it had to be leopard print with little like teeth and tribal paint tattooed on. Couldn't just be a bikini, which would be blatant fan service enough.
I have a different opinion on that. On her, so the outfit is overall sexual. Her boobs are everywhere. Okay, fine, yeah, that's bad. Got it. I don't think it's necessarily racist. I think the outfit is tone deaf. Like,
yeah,
it's
What's the important distinction there?
Say what?
What's the important distinction there?
So if you look up African tribes, for example, and do a Google image search, you will find tribes that have similar garb, and you can kind of tell what they were going for, but they missed the mark. Like, it wasn't blatantly racist. You kind of see, okay, they're wearing loincloths. They're not leopard loincloths. Okay. They have jewelry on. They're not bones and teeth and stuff, but I can see where they were trying to go. I don't think it's necessarily racist. I just think they missed the mark on what they were trying to do. If that makes any sense.
So
it's genericized.
There we go. That's a better term for it. Yeah.
It's also a case of where there's.
So if it was more accurate, it would be racist?
No, but that's a point I'm going to get to later on. If it were more,
But
if it were more accurate, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But I think that it's in that weird uncanny valley where it's not quite racist and it's not quite accurate. So you're just kind of like, I guess.
If I can add in on that, because I think I can tag in here and kind of maybe bring it home a bit.
Right.
For me, it's sort of 2 points. First, the lesser of the two. It's like Mo was saying. It's a kind of generic, kind of just vague African stuff. Like, first of all, Africa's a continent with a whole shit ton of cultures on it, not one. And just to say it's African is really not anything.
Right.
That's a continent. So you just sort of stop trying halfway through, and it's really obvious. But again, that's the lesser of the 2 points. The major one for me was more if there were more good examples of black characters and black female characters and such, you could throw in this, like, and we're just gonna be a little bit, tropey right now, and it's okay. And it would be okay. Like, people are up in
Mhm.
arms. She threw in Capcom. I forget the character's name, but there was the
Is it?
the black kind of tribal character in
Oh, what is her
or not
name?
Capcom, but the Marvel versus Capcom. I think it was.
No,
Yeah, I
it was
forget her name.
Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter
But
Alpha
Street
3.
Fighter, right?
Yeah.
Knows how much I know. Yeah, Street Fighter, the Street Fighter character who's black and has the rings around her neck and stuff like that. First of all, every character in Street Fighter is a racist stereotype. That's
Yes.
the point. But the reason people notice her and don't go, "What's up with Zangief? That's such a horrible, racist representation."
Or
of
what's
Russian
up with
guys."
T-Hawk?
Yeah, it's because we have other examples of white dudes. That's not like half the examples of that kind of character we see
Right.
are a trope. We get more non-trope versions of the character, so it makes the trope more acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my main thing. I don't think that Street Fighter should stop being a bunch of racist tropes. That's the point. If it's not your thing, then frankly, you probably shouldn't play fighting games in general.
Yeah, you'll have
Yeah.
no problem. Mortal Kombat, then have some racial
Yeah.
stereotypes about demons or something.
Oh, even Mortal
Yeah,
Kombat.
exactly.
Yeah,
Like-
even Mortal Kombat had not Nightwing, but the other Native American who also had Tom Hawks and a
Right.
neon green bird. Like,
It's true.
Or bicycle kick guy.
oh yeah, yeah.
I guess Raiden's also probably a stereotype.
Well,
Yeah.
he's more.
He's like the old master stereotype down to a T.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to get back, mainly my main point is essentially you can earn sort of the right to have a trope and it be okay by making
yes.
some non-trope characters the same type. You have to kind of bank up your ability to throw a trope in, and
Mhm.
then it's acceptable. And I don't think really anybody's done that.
No,
So,
not especially
we get the
RE5.
tropes first.
And
Yeah.
the thing that bothers me is that Resident Evil 5 did a really good job of handling race, given A, where it is, and B, having it be the T virus, and then having it not be analogous to like the AIDS epidemic and everything else that's been going on. They walked a really kind of fine line there that I think for the most part they navigated pretty well. And then they go and throw in this outfit for Shiva, and it's like, well, you fucked up. Good job.
And
Good job,
after,
Capcom.
like Anita Sarkeesian said, her normal outfit is
Exactly,
perfectly acceptable.
exactly.
It's not skimpy or anything. She's wearing pants. She's not wearing high heels. Like you put a woman in pants, a shirt with no cleavage, and sensible shoes. Good job. Wait, fucking bikini. You didn't quite earn that. You need a little bit more before you just go straight
Right.
bikini.
So if there was two more outfits of varying degrees of nudity to get to that point, then it'd be okay.
Or
maybe.
if Chris, no, it wasn't Chris. Who was in Resident Evil 5?
No, that was Chris.
Was it Chris Redfield? Okay, if Chris Redfield.
Yeah, because he fucking punches boulders at the end.
Oh,
Who
that's
else is
right.
doing that?
If Chris Redfield had like some skimpy ass speedos, or if he had an outfit that was equally as over sexualized, then okay. Like both.
At least be fair.
Yes, at least it's fair. At least you can't say they're both in sensible outfits, and he has multiple sensible outfits, but she has like titties hanging out, outfit. Like at that point, you say, well, it's still not necessarily right, but at least you hit both sides of the spectrum, and at least you attempted that.
It would be best if it was a single option to change both outfits or neither. So you have to have them
Yes.
both
Yeah.
in leopard print bikinis or neither.
Oh, that would be the best.
Deal with it. Banana hammock and titties hanging out. Nothing. Like a lot of people get really uncomfortable.
What did you just send me? Because this looks hella sexy right now. Wait.
That's Chris Redfield's alternate costume in
That's his-
Resident Evil 5,
Oh,
where
it-
he has bullet belts and leather straps on him, and he's wearing
Gonna need a shot from the waist down. He's
Oh.
wearing
Oh,
chaps.
shit.
yeah.
I was gonna say.
All right, hold on.
Yeah.
Let me see if I
So
can.
let
me see if I can-
Do you want to
Gotta stop the
reprise
stream.
that?
Gotta go play.
Wait, hold on. Let me. I'm gonna give this 2 minutes, and if this doesn't work, then I'm gonna give up. But I think those are my notes. You don't need to see that. All right, hold on.
Yeah, Wesker also has a ridiculous outfit, if I remember correctly, but I'm not going to look it up because I remember it being repulsive. Like in the same... Yeah, go ahead. Go take it.
There we go. Look, that's really pretty hot. I'll admit. So
Yeah. Okay, well, I think it's time for me to jump in
Go
because
for it.
I'm going to be the party pooper here. First of all, let's go with the lesser one. Objectification. Derek, you played Resident Evil 5 then?
No, I did some research on it for this episode because I'm a loser and don't play real people games.
Okay, when was the last game you played that had a really sexy girl in it?
The last game I played that had a sexy girl in it. Well, I've been playing Witcher 2,
Okay.
and the town is full of literal whores. So I don't know if that counts, but
Do you treat
as
those women as objects? I mean, I know it's a video game, so you're pretty much treating everything as an object, but are you objectifying those women?
I'm gonna go to Mass Effect 2 because that's a little bit different than like the random prostitutes wandering through town going, "Hey there!" every time I walk past. Honestly, while I do play pretty much all BioWare games as basically a dating sim where I have to do fight scenes in between the progressing the story, it's at least 50-50 actual story and romance to fan service. I would say leaning more like 60-40, like story and romance over fan service. Fan service is seriously a thing, and I do enjoy it.
I'm not talking about the idea of a developer having a sexual object as a character. More that if this character was a person, they weren't a character in the game, and they wore the outfits they did, they had the personality they did, would you sexually objectify them? Would you look at them as a sexual object?
Not generally. I don't tend to do that with any people. I look at people's butts and go, "Yeah, it's a nice butt on that person."
Yeah. So
they're still a person.
My contention with like the modern criticism of sexy bitches and men in video games is that it's become that sexual objectification isn't an act that an individual does to a thing. It seems to be a given. If you have a sexy character, they are now a sexy object. It doesn't matter how you treat them or how you feel about them. That's a sexy thing. It's a sexual object now. Now, that may be true for a lot of people. A lot of people may play the game and then just literally pause the screen and zoom in and go, I can see the panties, yay! Because God knows fucking everyone in Melee was like, Peach can float? Oh! Yeah, it happens. I recognize that. But I think we lose sight of the action of objectifying is different than something being a sexual object. So you could have, since we've been talking about her, Shiva. She's in a hot outfit. It looks tantalizing. But when you're in the middle of the game, I still care about her. I still care about her story. I still care about keeping her alive. I don't dismiss her personhood because she's attractive. So if we start saying that we're objectifying characters just by having them be fan service, I think we're missing the point of what objectification is, because then that starts to sound a lot like slut-shaming to me, where you're just going, oh, this thing's a sexy character. You need to put some clothes on, otherwise you won't be respected. Like, no, how about you just respect sexy characters? Now, of course, there's always exceptions to that. There's going to be developers that literally do just kind of take it to the next level, but
like Dead or Alive beach volleyball.
I think we lose sight when we just start saying, if this character is gratuitous fan service, it's objectified, because I think that takes away personal responsibility. So I'm kind of iffy about that. I'm not on board. As for the exoticism, perhaps it's more pernicious in minority cases, in minority demographics, because we have less examples of them. They're not part of the mainstream of whatever industry or art form that we're going to talk about. But it would be a mistake to say that the same thing doesn't happen to majority race. We still see the same thing happen with Irish. any game that touches on Irish things, you know it's going to be gratuitous amounts of green, leprechauns, gold, and drinking. That's just
Or they're dwarfs.
that's Irish. Yeah. Like, you could just take stereotypes from any culture, and you're going to be fucking stereotypical. In the same way we were just talking about how Africa is a country, and there's so many diverse things. Like, look at anime. Look at how Japan views white people in anime. They're all sexually promiscuous. They say fuck in between every other word. Like, you go to any other culture, and then look at how white people are perceived, and you get the exact same form of exoticism, where you have, like, Christians are these deeply mystical people with their own ancient, like, rituals and stuff and the exorcism. And to us, that's whatever. They've got, like, Daisy Duke wearing, like, tied up shirt, boobs bouncing out, blonde hair, ditzy shit. That's like your standard white girl, right? That's how they all are. So I think, yes, I could agree to exoticism, but I think you're going to see that in every culture because, for one, it's a stereotype, and you're probably already basing a lot of what you think about other people on ignorance because you're not interacting with them. It's not to justify it, but I think to say it's particularly, it has a tragic impact, I don't think that's true, because when we see the same thing happening to us from other cultures, you just roll your eyes. You go, oh, yes, of course. The white guy with the big, poofy hair thing going, fuck yeah, fuck. You just go, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I just kind of roll my eyes on it. Every time there's a drag queen and she's got to, like, rub up against some guy just to make him uncomfortable, because of course everyone that's, like,
right,
non-binary is exactly like that. They want to push people's boundaries and make them uncomfortable. Yeah, I guess stereotypes can be harmful, but at the same time, I just kind of don't care about it.
So I'm going to wrap around to what you asked earlier. If it were more accurate, is it racist? And this is specifically with the witch doctor that I want to touch on, because she makes this as an example of more exoticism. So if both of you have played Diablo 3? I know you have, Derek, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I played a monk for a little while.
Okay.
But that's about it.
But you've seen the witch doctor, haven't you? Like, what it looks like?
There were spiders.
Yeah, those spiders in jars and
spiders all day long.
So this is one thing where I don't agree with her, because I looked up, I was like, Witch Doctor Africa or whatever, just to see what they look like. And the Witch Doctor is the closest thing to a source material than the other two examples she gave. And this is where I was like, well, this is okay. Like, I have no problem with this. Like, it's a little, they throw a little, like, pizzazz or fantasy in there. Okay, sure, fine. But, and the Witch Doctor is an odd edge case, because if that Witch Doctor class were white, she would yell about cultural appropriation. If the Witch Doctor were black, she would argue that the representation is being racist. So you can't have it both ways at this point.
You can't win.
Is, again, I think, 'cause I'm with you, like, that is, like, frankly, to a certain extent, Witch Doctor that is accurate to the real life example, but then the real life example is vague and stuff. But
right.
I mean, so a Witch Doctor is always a trope. It is a trope.
Correct.
But for me, the thing that would, again, make it okay is if that weren't the only black characters in the game.
It's not, because Tyrael, well, granted, he's a fallen angel. Tyrael represents an African-American male. He's the angel in...
Oh, right. When he went human mode.
Yeah, when he went human mode. Yeah.
I was like, he doesn't have a face. How do you, like, he's black.
Well, not the color.
Like, oh, wait,
yes.
Okay.
In Reaper's Souls, he became a human.
I don't think I agree with that whatsoever, though, because I feel like if a character is racist, it's racist independent of how many non-racist stereotypes there are in the game. Like, if you have one white person and it is that stereotype I just said, I don't think that would change how that stereotype is a stereotype if you have a non-stereotype in there. I don't think you get brownie points for that. Mm-hmm. Like, if we're going to say that it is bad when it's standalone, it should be bad regardless of how many other characters are there. If we're saying that, like, it's okay because you're representing other things and therefore you're putting it into a context. I don't think that needs to go with saying. I think most people can just go, yes, this is a stereotype. This is not indicative of all people. In the same way that you don't do it to, like, Gears of War characters. Like, all of those guys wear all the same clothes, all the same uniform, and they have different personalities. Coltrane's the motherfucking Coltrane because he's Coltrane. I don't need him to wear, like, his murder ball outfit or whatever for his personality to shine through. And you could also say he's a stereotype because he's a loud black guy. And, loud black people, that's a stereotype. But we don't need to have, like, 3 other black guys in Gears of War in order for us to justify that.
Right.
On top of that, you end up with problems with representation where it's like, okay, this thing is completely representative of this demographic. But how do you represent a demographic? That is a stereotype. If you're trying to encompass a whole group of people into a person, by nature, you're generalizing. So in order to avoid this, you're going to have to, like, you mandate having to have multiple characters so that you can flesh out this demographic. And I think that's just a slippery slope. You're then saying that you could never have a truly representative character, because if it is representative, then it's a stereotype. And if it isn't representative, then you aren't, like, representing. You would have to do something like basically take the stereotype of a white person and then paint them black. And then somebody will just get upset over that because then you're not doing black people justice.
Right.
So I feel like that's
saying that a game should have, universal representation, because again, that's just going to be. We had this conversation with what was it, the Getting Off the Planets sim game where
RimWorld.
Where bi guys didn't exist.
And
all
yeah,
of them were bi. That one. Obviously, you can't make one game representative of all of humanity, because then it would just be a perfect sim of real life, and it would have every person alive in it. I was more saying in a broader context. Yeah, your scope is infinite. I was more saying in a broader context, if the one black person in a game, in each game, is always a trope, or is often a trope, or like a high percentage of a particular category of folks, a particular demographic, is usually represented as a trope rather than not, rather than just as a character who is among that demographic as an individual, then it gets to be annoying. Like, I'm not offended by random fuck white guy, because I've got 100,000 other white dudes who I can also go, be represented by in games, and it's not a big deal. There's a sea of white characters, but there's a much smaller concentration of minority characters, and a much bigger. Basically, you tend to get the same number of tropes out of that smaller pool, and you end up with less characters as opposed to just tropes.
Yeah,
and it could be a better balance.
I would have to ask then, whose responsibility is it then to represent these characters? Because if we go to Japan, they have a very similar market to ours, where they have lots of movies, lots of comics, they have lots of video games. And so you end up with lots of comics, movies, and video games that are Japanese-centric. Same thing with China. China has a similar market. They have their own movies, they have their own visual media, and they have games. And so you'll end up with lots of Chinese-centric. Of course, between America, Europe, and lots of northern/Western Asia, you have lots of white people and lots of different white cultures, and so you'll end up with predominantly white. In a lot of these white, or more of the Western nations, we have large concentrations of the black community, but the greatest density of black population doesn't have these markets like we do. You don't see lots of movies, lots of comics, lots of video games coming out of majority black countries. So I think in order for us to avoid relying on stereotypes like we would see in any of these other cultures portraying white people and black people, and I guess the Latin America they're
Yeah.
catching up. They've got some games that have come out recently, so they've been kind of doing their own thing. But I feel the same way about them as black people. They just kind of end up as a stereotype too. But is it our responsibility to say we're going to try to represent you? Because then I think you start falling into that cultural appropriation thing where people will just be like, "Oh, look, you're selling their culture.
Yeah.
Oh, look, you're profiting off their culture." Because I feel like that's a lose-lose. Like, we need to, if we want to, create that kind of diversity in the market as a whole. Like, if we're not looking at individual games, we're looking at franchises or at the entire thing. We're going to have to basically bring capitalism to these poor places and be like, hey, you guys need to make more movies and comics and video games and stuff in order to build that up, because that's the only way it's going to be true. It's going to come from their heart, and they'll tell the story they want to tell with the characters they want to do. And I've seen like a couple of those videos that made it to YouTube of like people trying to have like Bollywood, but the like Nigerian version, where they'll have like a toy helicopter and try to use perspective to show people running to it and then flying away. Like, they're trying, but you've got some really low production value. You gotta work with it. If that's the case, if we can like get them their own tools so they can build their own stuff, I think that would solve the problem. And any other way you try to solve this, somebody's going to get upset about it. And I don't think there's a perfect way to do it. You might be able to just be like, okay, we've got this studio. Let's invite a whole bunch of people that want to be game developers, and we'll bring them over here. They can study abroad for like a year or two and work on a game. And then maybe we can just facilitate that. I think that'd be a good jump start to it, but I'm not exactly sure if that's sustainable or not.
Yeah, and one of the problems with getting more diversity in gaming is that there is a low representation of people of color, in STEM fields. There's a low population in programming and in everything that makes video games. There's a low population of just people of color in that field. And so it's a problem of there being honestly a wage divide. Like, there's a certain barrier of entry to get into the field, and that barrier has lessened since we went to UAT. You don't need to go to UAT to do game design. You can get the Unreal Engine for free and use that. You can get Maya and Max for really cheap, and or pirated it if you want to. They don't honestly care, because eventually, if you get really good, you're going to be in the industry that will be buying the program that you will be using anyway. So they're getting their money on the back end. But the problem is just the barrier entry is still too high, and I don't have a solution for it. I mean, like you were suggesting, maybe invite people from the inner city and say, hey, if you want to do this, here's what you can do. We'll take you through like maybe a tutorial or this 8-week course or whatever. And if you really want to do it, you can then pursue it. Maybe that's an option. I don't know, but at some point,
I think that gets back to like poverty in general.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you're gonna find the same problem with any person of any background not being able to get into STEM fields if they didn't have the education, they didn't have the support in order to help get them there. It's just that a large portion of the African American community lives in poverty. And until we can solve the poverty problem, a lot of racial discrepancies in America are going to continue to exist regardless of how much affirmative action you try to pump into it, regardless of how many programs you try to outreach, because it's kind of like a Band-Aid. You're not solving the problem. You're just trying to like sugarcoat it a little bit. And maybe those couple of people that get to have that taste and be like, oh, look, they lifted me up and helped me do this one thing. That'd be great. And I don't want to turn that around. Like, I don't want to say no to that. But I'm aware that it's not sustainable. What we need to do is fix the underlying problem. And then you would see a lot more in the other direction.
I'll get back.
Say,
Go for it.
I was going to say one quick comment on the other countries not being developed enough to get into the game industry, because it's a very privileged thing to have, is a game industry. But as of like 4 or 5 years ago, I think, I can't be bothered to look up information right now, but as of at least a few years ago, there are more non-white people in America than white people. So white people are still the biggest single demographic, but more than half of America is non-white. But way more than half of the game industry is white. So that's still disproportionate. And, we've got a lot of folks, in this country who are of many different backgrounds who could tell the story, their stories and the stories of, of their culture they came from, if they had the opportunity to do so. Again, it's systemic. We're a podcast on the internet, so we're not going to, fix income inequality here in the next hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's
yeah, let's not go there for now. There's another point I wanted to bring up about what she was talking about. She mentioned games that recognize cultural background, and she gave them like an A plus. I'm like, yay, good job. One of them was Mafia. One of them was Mafia 3. It's a game set in the 1960s where, by default, racial tensions were high. It's set in like Louisiana, so double, the racial tensions. And she congratulated the game for showing the racial background of the main character and some of the side characters. And I was like, okay, fine, it's part of the story. I get it. Whatever. Okay. Then she mentions Watch Dogs 2, and I was like, Watch Dogs 2 really didn't go into Marcus being black explicitly. I mentioned this earlier when I played the game. There were a few comments where he talks to another black guy who's also a hacker, and they're like, oh yeah, nice to meet another brother in here. You know that there's not a lot of us in here. And then the game continues. Like, it doesn't rocket into statistics or something ham-fisted about it. It's just, yeah, there's not a lot of us in here. The story goes on. And then this is to wrap around, she talks into games that don't recognize culture or background. She mentions Remember Me, never played it, I can't really talk about it. But she talks about Alex in Half-Life 3. She's like, well, Alex, I can't remember if Alex was explicitly African-American or Half-Life 2, sorry, Half-Life 2.
Yeah, unless you got some kind of future release that, and you just upset a lot of people that you have Half-Life 3, you goddamn asshole. Share it with the world.
I just upset all four of our listeners and viewers. I can't remember if they explicitly said if she was African American or what her race was, but you can definitely tell she was not white. And Sarkeesian talks about how this was a problem, and I'm like, it's not really a problem because her race isn't important to the story. Like, who cares if she's black?
I thought she was saying it was a good example of them just having a black character and then just having them be a character, not having black be part of the character. I don't know. She didn't spend much time on it, so I didn't get a distinct idea, but I thought it was a positive.
Because it was mixed in with Remember Me, because she was like, oh yeah, this character's black, but they don't go against her, in her background. Alex is black, but they don't go in her background. It's like, well, it's not important. Like, who cares? It's important in Mafia because of the background, of the setting, of the story. That is important. So yes, expound on that. But you can replace Alex with any other race, and it would not have any bearing on the story of Half-Life 2. You can replace the race of Marcus in Watch Dogs 2, and there may be some minor differences, but the overall story is intact. That's like arguing that we need to go into Geordi being an African American in Starfleet. We need to go through Cisco being an African American in Starfleet. We need to go through Bernard from Westworld being an African American in the company he's in. No, you don't, because that's unimportant. He happens to be a black guy in the story. None of that matters. Like, why bring it up?
Yeah, I think that in cases like that, where it's not some weird thing where, you're just a person in a society where a portion of the society is black and you are black, and that's it. End of discussion. I think that's fine. Mm-hmm. That's usually how it probably should be done with most of the characters. Yeah. There's no story there. Yeah, I don't think it's a negative thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That is just a perfectly acceptable thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Did she mention
a formula? But
did my sound come out?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I think it's coming out of my speakers now on top of my headphones for some reason. But did she mention San Andreas at all?
She
No,
didn't.
she didn't. See, that's another thing that bothers. She didn't mention San Andreas, and she didn't mention GTA 5, both of which are accurate representations of African Americans that aren't racist. But
Yeah,
but
like I
she,
was gonna say, I was in the middle of growing up in racist USA
yeah,
in fucking West Virginia when I got that game, and of course while I'm playing it, I have to deal with my mom just being like, "Nah, I'll leave that to your imagination."
Yeah,
But
game like you'd expect.
like you run around, you do your gang stuff, and then when you try to get out of the gang, you have to like build up your whole life and rebuild your company and all of this stuff. And it's not like every mission is white people attack you or the police beat you up, but you always have that undercurrent there.
yeah,
You always have that, like, all of the black people you run into are a little bit harder. They're a little bit, they aren't as chipper. And then
hmm
every white person you run into is on a ridiculous level of the chipper scale, or they're like a ridiculous level of the like geeky nerdy guy or something like that,
yeah,
or like the chic businessman.
hmm
And then you end up with the cop that's the main antagonist.
the one played by Samuel L.
Yeah, I can't think of
I
his
can't
name.
remember his name either.
Officer Tenpenny. Tenpenny.
Okay,
No, was that it?
sure, let's go with that.
Ah,
Yeah,
someone's gonna beat me up for that. But then you have him. The main antagonist is a cop who's black, and you're black, and so ultimately, like you never felt like it was a game that was designed around racial overtones because they never threw it in your face,
hmm
but you always experienced it throughout the entire gameplay, and there's it ended up being so good, even though people like ragged on it for being like, oh, straight out of Compton, look, I'm a black guy in a gang now instead of being in the mafia, so this is silly. But it was really good. It was a really
yeah,
fucking good game. And anyone can go back and play it and enjoy it for what it does in that regard. And I feel like if she didn't even bring that up, that's kind of a shame, because that's such a good game about, like, I don't want to necessarily say romanticizing the black community, but there's a lot of it there. I feel like it does kind of romanticize a
hmm
lot of what it means to be in the black community, at least from the perspective of a white
yeah,
person growing up in Hicktown.
Yes.
and
Her video did center a lot on black women, and that was an example of black men.
That's true.
She did throw in several examples of black male characters done well because she didn't have, I guess, enough examples of good black women done well. Unfortunately, hit the bottom of the barrel on that one. But yes, that could have been thrown in there with those.
yeah.
So
Um, let me see. I think there were two, just my overall thoughts on her video because we're approaching an hour here.
okay,
She keeps making this point about tribal markings and tribal tattoos being insensitive and borderline racist. Again, I went to Google image, African tribes or whatever, and the paint or the mud or whatever they use for they have those markings. Like that's part of their culture.
yeah,
That's part of their tribe. I can. It's not.
I don't think
It's not.
inherently wrong.
It's not
You can just
inherently wrong.
Yeah, you can
But
do wrong things with it.
yes, but I don't think the examples she showed are doing wrong. I think that someone looked at Google search and say, okay, well, there are these markings. Now, if they went into more detail and like researched them, I don't know. But on the surface, I'm not insulted. I'm not mad because that's a thing in the real world. Like it goes back to my point. You do it, you can do it wrong and people get upset. You do it right and people get upset. Like there's no, that's fine. It's a thing in Africa. Like what else do you want?
I'll tie this point back into mine about objectifying people.
hmm
If Did you like the Chappelle show?
Oh, I love the Chappelle show.
How many of his skits were fucking racist?
A lot of them.
Did you ever feel he was hateful about it though?
No, no.
I
Yeah.
think if you had Richard Spencer, that white nationalist, if you had
Okay.
him stand up and do any of Chappelle's jokes in the same way, same pitch, same setting, it would not be funny. You would probably not laugh. You'd probably look at it and be like, dude, this guy is fucking racist. But it's Chappelle. And in
Yeah.
between the skits, he makes it so that you are comfortable. He also talks a lot about unity and coming together and enjoying each other's company, and then throws out like fuck white people though, and then like those Asians at the counter store always saying I'm trying to steal shit. Like
Yeah.
I think having context is what matters, and when you see
Yeah.
that a developer is putting in fan service, I kind of don't care about it being representative of anything.
Right.
When we talk about like someone trying to sprinkle on a flavor of diversity by going like, yes, I want to have some Japanese culture, so you throw in some rising suns, some katanas, and a couple samurais and some top knots. Boom, we got Japan. Like, okay, I could see that being bad, immoral, if you're doing it to mock them. But if you're
Correct.
just doing it to have flavor or to have some diversity in there, I don't really feel like you should be upset. I think the context is what matters.
Yes,
If it was in
exactly.
post, okay, same thing to compare Chappelle Show to this. Take any of the stereotypes that we just talked about between Shiva and I'm just gonna keep going back to her because we're thinking about loincloths and. But take anything that we just discussed and put it in Postal 2. That's that context. That game is a trolley game about just taking the piss out of everything. And if you start putting in those kind of flavors of diversity, it's to take the piss out of them. It's the context that matters.
Yeah.
So I think that's
me,
what's most important.
I'll just say, for me, my metaphor for this is it's the difference between me playing Cards Against Humanity with my friends out here from college, and me playing Cards Against Humanity with my family from Kansas.
Yeah.
It's a different experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not quite as fun.
And I mentioned this before, but I want to say it again. The main argument she makes is objectification. That is the thrust. Okay, fine, I'm behind you. The fact that she throws race on top.
Yeah.
Oh, ha.
Behind you, thrust.
We're 8 years old.
Objectifying.
I get it. Objectification is something we should have a conversation about. You don't need to throw race on top of that. That just convolutes everything, and then you have people, and then it becomes a distraction. Like, we should be talking about objectification of all women, not specifically women of color. Because the moment you throw race on top of that, the assumption is that white women are fine, or it's okay to objectify white women, for example. But and that's just as wrong as objectifying someone who's a person of color. Like, they're both equally wrong. Drop the race part and let's talk about the greater picture here.
I'd say you could do this the same thing with exoticizing. That's why I said, like, if you go to Japan and you look at how they perceive white people, that's pretty fucked up if that's how you actually perceive white people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that we have our own culture where we can kind of just disseminate our own diverse opinion of ourselves. It's still fucked up that they would think that way. And if you had a majority black population and they had the same kind of view of white people as that racial stereotype in Japan, that would be wrong. Saying like it's particularly bad because of one group or a minority group, I guess because of how pernicious it can be if you are a member of that group in that society, but I don't think it changes the morality of the action by the individual itself.
I agree.
I think you can lose a lot of that whenever you start talking about trends and general culture. And I know that's what she's critiquing is culture, not a single game or a single instance of racism.
Right.
But I think you can kind of get lost in between, like, being stuck at that individual level and being stuck at that macroscopic level, because on both ends it doesn't fully work. You have to have some kind of like reason in the middle.
Yeah, I totally agree. Any closing thoughts, Derek?
I was going to say, my closing thought, which I'll try and be concise with since we're running on, like we do, to touch base on the topic we've come back to a few times throughout this discussion, which is really the difficult thing to answer, the catch-22 of how do you do it right, when is it not wrong, whose responsibility is it? I would say the way to be a responsible creator, regardless of what you're doing, is to create consciously, with intent. Know what you're doing and do it on purpose. If you're gonna choose to make a character a trope, do it on purpose. Say, yeah, I want to make them this trope for this reason. Don't just be like, and then there's a black guy and he's all loud and he likes chicken, because that's how that does, and then move on.
Because
like,
that's how it
just
is,
your
right?
Default, yeah, like if you just default to the trope and then stop thinking, like you should probably think about yourself a little bit for a while and deal with that issue. I'm wearing my DFTBA shirt, and I will, as I do as often as possible, quote John and Hank Green, say, my mantra for life I try to follow is imagine others complexly. If you imagine other people as complexly as you imagine yourself to be, it's really hard to be an outright asshole to them.
Right.
And it's really, really hard to be racist or sexist or anythingist, because you see them as an individual who is many layers, just like you, because they are.
Yeah.
And that's how you should view. It's not necessarily how you should view every character, because again, some characters can be and sometimes should be tropes. Tropes are fun when they're used appropriately. It's like playing Cards Against Humanity and making a racist joke, because neither you nor anyone in the room is even vaguely racist, and that's why it's able to be funny. It's the Chappelle Show, not, the KKK meeting. There's a difference.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and you can have Bayonetta be running around in skin-tight, skimpy clothes and not be a sexual object.
Yes.
She's sexually empowered. That's the difference. Like, you can have the same outfit on a character and have it be one and the other, given the context. So just think about things. Be a responsible creator. Don't just, default to tropes. That's dangerous.
Yep. Awesome. I think that's a good place to go ahead and wrap it up. If you're listening to the audio podcast, I will put the link to the video we're talking about in the show notes. If you're watching us right now, the link will be in the description down below, down there somewhere. Yeah. And I think that's it. Did you guys have anything to plug? Anything to say? Anything?
I'm going to be starting a new YouTube channel called Purple Politics, where I'm basically taking all of the time that I spend fruitlessly on Facebook typing out 2-page long responses to fake news and bad opinions, and I'm instead going to record a video and then post it as a video reply to that person. And I'm going to build up a video channel about basically my views as a centrist trying to sift through the bullshit and get to the truth. And that's my aim with it. When I got more information, I'll tell you, but right now I've only got like a couple things lined up, and I have no idea how I'm going to format this. Am I just going to look into a camera and talk? Am I going to have like pictures and it's just me talking in the background? I don't know what I'm doing, but I already...
Green screen.
I could.
Get a green screen and just let me decide what's in the background.
That's a recipe for
Independent of the
disaster.
video. Just independent of the video. Just it's gonna be like that episode of Who's Line.
Oh.
Oh.
That'd be pretty funny. I'd watch that. But you keep that on your radar. When I've got a little more flesh out, I'll plug it again. I won't do it every week, but when I've got something concrete or maybe a couple videos up, I'll plug it again.
Just only upload as often as someone's wrong on the internet.
So every 2 seconds.
Well, they've been wrong so far, and I've got three notepad things open of
Wow.
text. I just copied what I put in the Facebook comment and saved it on Notepad, and I'll just make a video out of it. But I already have 3 videos lined up. I just have to figure out how I want to do it.
Like I mentioned earlier, I've been playing Resident Evil 7. I actually have an hour and a half's worth of video that I'm going to be putting on this channel. It's pretty fucking hilarious because I am a little bitch when it comes to scary games, I have realized. So, if you want to see me scream like a weak little man, stay tuned. What about you, Derek?
Nothing lately. Depending on how things go in the near future, I might try and put together some, not live stream because the internet's died when I tried to do that last, but might put together some gameplay videos of Gigantic because I want to get some word spread on Gigantic and convince you two losers to come play with me because it's boring playing online team-based gameplay yourself.
That's not how you
Yeah.
spell Gigantic.
Getting teamed up with all these scrubs. Scrub. Yeah. So.
But do you think you're fly? Because a scrub is a guy who thinks he's fly.
I think I'm far
No,
too
a scrub is a guy
pale
that can't get no love from me. Hanging out the passenger side of his best friend's ride, just trying to holler at me.
and I am far too pale to be part of this joke.
I think
Obviously, he doesn't want your number nor your time.
I think we should end it on that note.
On that high note.
On that very, very high note. Thank you for listening and watching to episode 36 of the Secret Caliber podcast. You guys have a nice night.
Bye.